What if the reason money feels confusing isn't because you're bad with numbers, but because no one ever showed you how the system actually works? Imagine spending 12 years in school, learning history, science, algebra, geography, memorizing dates, solving equations, studying the movements of planets and the structure of atoms, yet somehow no one ever sits you down and calmly explains why some people slowly become financially secure while others work just as hard and still feel like they are running in place. It's not luck, and it's not intelligence, and it's rarely the dramatic story we imagine. In truth, it is something quieter than that, something almost invisible, a handful of small ideas about money that quietly shape the direction of a person's life over many years. I want to speak with you about those ideas tonight, as if we were simply sitting together having a thoughtful conversation, not a lecture, not a complicated financial seminar filled with intimidating words, but a quiet exploration of how money behaves in the real world. Because the strange truth is that most people do not struggle financially because they are lazy or irresponsible. Most people struggle because they were never given a clear map. They were taught how to earn money, but not how money itself works. Money is a curious thing. It surrounds nearly every part of our daily lives. It influences the homes we live in, the work we choose, the freedom we experience, and even the peace of mind we carry with us each night. Yet despite its importance, the basic nature of money remains mysterious to many people. And when something important feels mysterious, we often assume it must be complicated. But the deeper I have observed the world, the more I have noticed that many powerful systems are actually quite simple once you understand their patterns. Nature is like this. A forest appears impossibly complex when you first look at it, yet the entire forest grows from a simple process repeated again and again. Seeds falling, roots forming, sunlight feeding life, and time quietly doing its work. Money behaves in a remarkably similar way. Let me invite you to imagine something very small. Imagine that you are holding a single seed in your hand. It is tiny, dry, unimpressive. If you drop it onto the ground, you may never think about it again. Yet hidden within that tiny seed is the potential for something astonishing. Place it into the soil, allow rain and sunlight to reach it, give it patience and time, and that tiny seed begins to change. First, a fragile shoot pushes its way through the soil. Then a small plant begins to form. Months later, it grows stronger. Years later, it becomes a tree. Decades later, that tree may stand tall enough to shade an entire field. And if seeds from that tree continue to fall and grow, eventually an entire forest may appear where once there was only a single seed. The remarkable part of this transformation is how quietly it happens. Day by day, the changes are almost invisible. If you were to visit the tree each morning, you might say nothing is happening at all. Yet over time, something extraordinary unfolds. The growth compounds. One layer of life builds upon another until the result becomes undeniable. Money behaves in a remarkably similar way to that seed. Many people look at a small amount of money and feel disappointment. They think it is too small to matter, too insignificant to change their future. But that belief hides one of the most important truths about money. Small amounts of money, given enough time, can grow into something far larger than we expect. This phenomenon is often called compound growth, but the name itself can make it sound more complicated than it really is. In simple terms, it means that money can grow, and then the growth itself can grow again, and then that new growth continues growing. It is a quiet multiplication that takes place over long stretches of time. Imagine you plant one seed and it grows into a tree that produces fruit. Each fruit contains more seeds. If you plant those seeds, new trees begin to grow. Those trees produce even more seeds. Slowly, the growth multiplies beyond what the original seed could ever have produced on its own. Money behaves in much the same way when it is allowed to grow patiently. But here is where many people encounter a difficulty. We live in a world that often rewards speed and excitement. We are drawn toward dramatic results, rapid progress, quick success. Compound growth, however, is slow at the beginning. It is quiet. It does not announce itself with fireworks. In its early years, it can appear almost disappointing, yet later, when enough time has passed, the growth becomes powerful and undeniable. This is why understanding time is so important when it comes to money. Time is perhaps the most powerful ally that money can have. A small amount of money growing over a long period of time can eventually become surprisingly large. But when time is removed from the equation, the same small amount struggles to grow. Let me tell you a simple story to illustrate this. Imagine two young people beginning their adult lives on the same day. They are similar in many ways. Both are intelligent, both are hardworking, both are hopeful for the future. They find jobs and begin earning income. At first, their lives look almost identical. They wake early, travel to work, return home in the evening, and slowly build their independence. The first person believes that financial success comes primarily from earning more money, so they focus their energy on promotions, raises, and better opportunities. Whenever their income increases, they reward themselves with improvements to their lifestyle, a slightly nicer apartment, a better car, more comfortable vacations. On the surface, this seems perfectly reasonable. After all, why earn money if not to enjoy life? The second person also works hard and also enjoys life, but early on they learn something small yet powerful. They learn that money can grow quietly if it is allowed to. So each month they set aside a small portion of what they earn. Not an enormous amount, just a small, consistent portion. They allow that money to be invested in places where it can slowly grow. Years pass. At first, the difference between the two lives is hardly noticeable. Both appear to be doing well. But slowly, something subtle begins to change. The first person continues working hard for every dollar they earn. Their income grows, but so do their expenses. The second person continues working as well, but the money they invested years earlier begins to grow quietly in the background. While they sleep, while they work, while they spend time with family, the small seeds they planted continue growing. 10 years pass, then 20. Eventually, the difference becomes striking. The second person discovers that the money they planted long ago now produces new money on its own. The growth has begun to compound. Meanwhile, the first person still depends entirely on their next paycheck to maintain their lifestyle. Both individuals worked hard, yet their financial experiences are very different. The difference was not intelligence or luck. It was understanding how money behaves over time. This leads us to another important idea that many people misunderstand. Income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is the money that flows into your life through work or business. Wealth, however, is the money that remains and continues growing. Someone can earn a very high income and still struggle financially if nearly everything they earn flows back out through expenses. Meanwhile, someone with a modest income may quietly build financial stability if they consistently save and invest a portion of what they earn. Think of income as water flowing into a bucket. If the bucket has large holes in the bottom, the water disappears as quickly as it arrives. Wealth is created when some of that water remains in the bucket and slowly accumulates over time. Another quiet principle that shapes financial outcomes is something called lifestyle inflation. When people begin earning more money, they naturally improve their lifestyle. A nicer home, better food, more comforts. There is nothing wrong with enjoying life, but if expenses rise at the same speed as income, the opportunity to build wealth quietly disappears. The bucket fills and empties at the same time. People who eventually become financially secure often develop a simple habit. When their income increases, they allow a portion of that increase to flow into savings or investments before expanding their lifestyle. This small habit may seem insignificant in the moment, but over many years it can change the direction of a person's life. Another concept worth understanding is the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset is something that places money into your life. A liability is something that quietly removes money from your life. Many possessions can behave as either depending on how they are used. A property that produces rental income may function as an asset because it generates money. But the same property can become a liability if it requires constant expenses without producing income. People who build financial stability tend to focus their attention on gradually acquiring assets, not necessarily extravagant assets, simply things that generate value over time. These assets form a quiet financial ecosystem. Each asset contributes a small stream of income or growth, and together those streams slowly form a river. The remarkable part of this process is that it often begins very modestly. A small investment here, a small savings habit there, but over time, those small beginnings accumulate. They grow roots like the early stages of a forest. Now, you might wonder why such basic ideas are not taught more widely in schools. The answer has much to do with history. Educational systems were largely designed to prepare people for employment. They teach valuable skills that help individuals contribute to society and earn a living. But financial literacy, the understanding of how money grows and behaves, was often left outside the formal curriculum. As a result, many people entered adulthood equipped to earn money, but not fully equipped to manage and grow it. The encouraging news is that financial understanding does not require extraordinary intelligence. It requires awareness and patience. Anyone willing to observe their habits, learn gradually, and apply simple principles can improve their relationship with money. One of the most powerful first steps is simply paying attention. Spend time observing where your money comes from and where it goes. Many people are surprised by what they discover when they take an honest look. Patterns appear. Small expenses that once seemed invisible become clear. Awareness alone can begin shifting decisions. Another helpful step is beginning small. People often believe they must wait until they have large sums of money before they begin saving or investing. But remember the seed. The power of growth comes from time and consistency. A small seed planted today has far more potential than a large seed planted decades later. It can also be helpful to think about money as stored opportunity rather than immediate reward. When money is saved or invested, it becomes a resource that can support future choices. It can provide flexibility, security, and freedom later in life. Patience is essential in this process. Many people abandon financial habits too early because the results appear slow at first. But just as a tree requires time to grow strong roots beneath the soil, financial growth often happens quietly before it becomes visible. Over time, these habits begin to change the way a person experiences life. Financial stress begins to soften. Decisions are no longer made under constant pressure. Opportunities become easier to explore because there is a foundation supporting them. And perhaps the most comforting realization of all is this: many people who feel they are bad with money were never truly given the chance to learn these ideas in the first place. It is not a personal failure, it is simply missing information. Once you begin understanding these patterns, money starts to feel less mysterious. It becomes a system that can be observed, guided, and shaped with thoughtful decisions. You were never incapable of understanding money, you simply were not shown the map. But once you see the map, the journey becomes clearer. Each small decision becomes a step forward. Each seed planted today becomes part of a future forest. And perhaps the most hopeful truth is that it is never too late to begin planting those seeds. Even a small seed planted today can grow into something meaningful with patience and care. If this conversation has sparked a thought in your mind, I would genuinely enjoy hearing from you. What financial lesson do you wish someone had explained to you earlier in life? Sharing your thoughts may help someone else who is just beginning their journey. And if you find value in thoughtful explorations like this, quiet reflections on the hidden patterns shaping our lives, then you are warmly invited to join me again. You can subscribe so that we can continue exploring these ideas together. Because the more we understand the quiet rules that guide money, time, and life itself, the more calmly and confidently we can move through the world.